proceed. So, starts introduction. Okay. So, good evening and namaskar to everyone. I am Ayush, and today I am with our today's coordinator, Rafi Mondal. So, today we will have a lecture on rethinking history of early Tamil India, none other than Professor T.K. Venkatasubramanian. So, now I will request to our coordinator Rakhi to say their introduction. Up to Rakhi.
Good evening and namaskar to everyone. Professor T.K. Venkatasubramanian is a distinguished historian known for his pioneering research on South Indian history, and the intersection of music and historical consciousness. With over 4 decades of scholarship, he has made significant contributions to Indian historiography through his nuanced and interdisciplinary approach. About the political economy of agrarian change, Nationalist Sharka (1880 to 1939) critically examines colonial agrarian transformation, while music as history in Tamil Nadu explores the deep connection between Tamil music traditions and historical narratives. His scholarships reflect a rare ability to bridge economic, social, and cultural histories, offering fresh insights into regional and national narratives. Beyond his academic contribution, Professor Venkata Subramanian is deeply committed to preserving and interpreting the rich cultural heritage of Tamil Nadu. His engagement with classical music, inherited from his father, his esteemed Professor T. V. Kupaswamy, informs his work, making his research not only historically rigorous but also culturally immersive. His scholarship continues to inspire historians, musicologists, and cultural theorists alike. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and up to you, sir.
Can I start?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be with you this evening on an online lecture, which has become the norm since we are not able to travel or uh, e-learning resources have become a part of our learning process. So I'm happy to be here to share my thoughts with you. And since I'm talking to a lot of students, first I would like to tell them that we are living in a knowledge society. And a knowledge society is definitely different from that of an industrial society. You know that. So, in information society, sociologists are very quick to see these changes and then discuss it. Historians are very, very slow in catching up. So, we are yet to begin on a knowledge society as a social formation. In any case, knowledge economy is known. Abdul Kalam made it very, very clear in his Vision 2020. There is a lot of discussion, and he was the one person who was discussing about knowledge economy. So, knowledge economy and knowledge society are the times in which we are living. So, that's why teaching learning process has to be on the basis of knowledge production, pedagogy, and practice. All these three go together. So, a student of history as well as a teacher of history should know how knowledge was produced, and then after that, how research has taken it further. It is in that sense that I am mentioning knowledge, pedagogy, and practice. So, the very title that I have given makes it very clear. It is History of Early Tamil India. So, we are discussing things from within the discipline of history, number one, and early for students of history, it definitely conveys that we are not talking about 10th or 12th century or 18th century or modern period. We are talking about the historical experience of a slightly earlier period. And Tamil India coinage is because I'm not using Tamilagam, which generally we used to say that it is history of Tamilagam or history of far south or history of South India. All these have been actually used. Now I prefer to focus on Tamil India. I thank the recent editors of India, a Civilization, Histories of a Civilization, G.N. Devi, Dr. Ravi Kori Setter, and Tony Joseph for coining this term, which appealed to me. So there is rethinking. We will come back to that a little later. It is history of early Tamil India. So by this, I want to make certain basic things clear. First, let us start with the expression Tamil, Tamils. Because for those who are not very familiar with the history of Tamil Nadu, I want to draw your attention to two books. One by David Schulman in 2016, which is Tamil, a biography. And then another recent book which has come in 2025. And the title of the book is actually Tamils, a portrait of a community. So the titles themselves convey Tamil, a biography is about the language. Tamils is about the community with a linguistic identity that we have. So we have to train ourselves to even critically examine what even the title is trying to convey to us. So, in that sense, so I will first begin with a few observations for students to understand. Say, suppose I say Tamil, a biography by David Schulman. Uh, when we say Tamil, definitely it is about an ancient language. And that language has also produced a certain body of knowledge, some of which are technical, much of it is intrinsic to our ancient culture and sensibility, well documented with a continuous literary tradition. So that is Tamil biography. But about the other one that I'm talking about, uh, you see, the way that the information that they are trying to convey is arranged itself will reveal whether it is a textbook, it is a popular book, or it is a research work. So, a student who is pursuing history at the level, higher level, should distinguish between a textbook, a tool book, and a popular book. I would put the book in a popular category by looking at the very chapterization. The chapterization is like this: age of poetry, age of empire, age of transition, age of the Europeans, age of freedom. And although there is a lot of material which reflects the knowledge that is already produced, I would like to compliment the author for a kind of a synthesis and configuration of knowledge already produced. I don't find anything new. So that way I won't consider it as a kind of a research work or anything. It's a popular book and very, very readable book, A Portrait of a Community. It has come out just now, 2025, published by Aleph. So I drew your attention to this because I'm going to talk about uh, the academic history. The academic history means that it is done in a university, it is done as research, and then how it has progressed, where I mean that some rethinking has actually come from my side. So, actually, as I said, knowledge is already produced. People have been producing, they have been thinking about it. When they think about it, and especially in a research sense, they produce a certain body of knowledge. So now this takes me back to my postgraduate days, if you want. I mean, I become a little nostalgic here. So my postgraduate days in Madras University, 1966-68, which is nearly 5.5 decades ago, uh, we were given a knowledge that was produced in 1930s, 1950s, and 1960s. About, say, for example, what I'm talking about is very simple. Nilkant Shastri's terms, Sangam age Pallavas. I'm talking about Sangam age and Pallavas, not even Cholas. So I'm going to talk about the Sangam age and the Pallavas, and how thinking has progressed, how knowledge has been produced by different people. That is why when knowledge production, knowledge transmission is what a teacher is supposed to do. And the student is a knowledge consumer. So in that sense, in 1950s and 60s, when I was a student, certain books were popular. Maybe it has not even reached other universities. People teaching South India may not have handled those books. I mean, I'm talking about a percentage. Classical Age of the Tamils, Augustan Age of the Tamils by Aragya Swami, Chronology of the Early Tamils by K.N. Sivaraja Pillai, History of the Tamils 1929 by P.T. Srinivas Iyengar, Manimegale in its historical setting, K. Krishnasamy Iyengar, and Nattinai in its historical setting, K.K. Pillai, Agananur in its historical setting by C. Ramachandran. And like that, that is the way that it was actually. These were the books, and Sangam Polity of N. Subramaniam. These are all the books which were taught to us under South Indian history. And you know that after the linguistic provinces division in 1956, regional universities compulsorily introduced a paper on that particular region. See, history of Tamil Nadu was compulsory in almost all universities of Tamil Nadu and colleges, naturally. Then history of Karnataka was compulsory in Karnataka University. History of Andhra was compulsory in Andhra University. History of Kerala was there in Kerala University. In that sense, when you have the body of knowledge, historical knowledge, I mean, produced, say I will give an example of the pattern and how it has changed. That's what I'm going to talk about. So suppose you take a book by name Ahananuru in its historical setting. It was an MLit thesis done at Madras University, published by Madras University a little later. Then there is a certain pattern of organizing the information. Again, I'm very consciously using information because we have gone through an information society, and information is not knowledge. Information has to be converted into a historical form of knowledge. So now, when you have an MLit thesis in 1960s by late Professor C. Ramachandran, who headed the department of also, there is a certain pattern. When you examine a text, particularly a Sangam text, it was A.L. Basham who suggested that these texts have to be looked at from the point of view of history as a historical source material. That was a suggestion. So now, naturally, when you deal with a text, what is the first question? What is the date of the text? The second question is, as a source of history, can it be used as a source for history? Political. Naturally, you will have information on Cholas, you will have information on Pandyas, you will have information on Cheras, you will have information on chieftains, you will also have some instances of war, battlefield, etc. This is the political. And naturally, the title of the chapter will be Political Conditions as revealed by Agananuru. Then when it comes to social, caste, status of women, food, dress, games and pastime, funerary practices, that will all come under social. Economic, occupations, houses, trade, etc. will come. Religion, deities and worship, festivals, superstitions, etc. will come. culture, literature, music, dance, painting, and sculpture. So that means a text will have all this information. So this is how it started. And I don't want to go into the 1930s kind of thing. I gave a lecture elsewhere, which will give an idea that in Tamil Nadu, to arrive at even the date of Sangam, there was a time up to say 1950, before Nilakant Shastri, a literary intellectual almost dictated. He dominated the scene. So you have to say, get the clearance of a literary intellectual to say, or even to alter the perception of the date of a text. So that is what I want to convey. Now, this is a kind of practice of history, research of history, examining a text, looking for historical information, and making statements on political conditions, social conditions. This was the practice, which we call it as conventional now. Now we call it, it's a very, very conventional politico-military. Even to describe Nilakant Shastri's work, people say that it was conventional, it was politico-military, and it was actually nationalistic because he has got that statements. And a nationalist, we'll bring it under nationalist historiography. I don't want to go into those kind of details. Now you imagine a person coming from this kind of a background into Delhi University in 1983. So 1976 to 83 was my preparation time. And Indian History Congress was the window where I could interact with people, I could find out what is happening elsewhere and what are the questions they are addressing, their sources, and how history is being written. So that kind of exposure I got between 1976 and 1983 before I came to Delhi University. So when I came to Delhi University, the first pamphlet that was given to me was interesting. I missed the Bardwan session. I joined on the 1st of February 1984 and I got all the sectional presidents' addresses. And sectional president address at Bardwan, B.T. Chattopadhyaya questioning Indian medieval. All those who are in ancient India, we know about the making of early medieval India. I mean that. I don't want to go into detail. You can read Brajodas' book. I just want to bring out the issue. So the way that history was looked at and taught in this part of that is north, that is JNU, Delhi, and maybe Bihar, Calcutta, which has not come to south, is this. So two key papers for students, I want to bring them, to bring the notice of the students. One is a paper by Professor Herman Kulke in volume 19 of IHR. See, somewhere in late 80s or probably early 90s. And he has compared the pre-modern historical processes in India and Europe. It's a very, very long, detailed paper. And he talked about a common beginning. See, you have a certain way of looking at world history. That's what I mean. So a common beginning, which is always Neolithic revolution, 8th to 6th millennia, advance of urban culture, series of historical movements, which we call migrations, historical processes and impulses, interrelated regional processes, settlement of nomadic groups, process of urbanization and early state formation. Process of urbanization and early state formation. And all these questions you will not find in the publications of South up to say 1975 or 80 even. Process of urbanization, early state formation, agrarian extension, and inter-regional trade, intellectual process, which he calls axial age, that is the age of the intellectuals, world empire, 550 BC, Alexander's campaigns, and succeeding Hellenism, Augustus and Egypt. Here, I would like to, in a light-hearted this thing, I would like to quote Nilakant Shastri. You know, Madras University, the first professor was Krishnasamy Iyengar, S. Krishnasamy Iyengar. And Professor Nilkant Shastri took over in 1930. 1929, he was principal Meenakshi College, which later on became Annamalai University. 1930, he took over here. And in those days, there was no presentation for selection of a professor, but he chose to address the Senate. This is what I am going to do as a professor. First time, and it is reported in Hindu, August 12th, 1930. What he says is, if chronology and geography are the two eyes of history, ancient India was blind until Alexander's invasion. This is, I'm quoting Nilkant Shastri. If chronology and geography are the two eyes of history, then ancient India was blind until Alexander's invasion. So one has to search for the sources, use the sources carefully, and then do research. That kind of it gave a scheme. And in section 8 of that paper, Kulke raises the issue of Middle Ages also. If people can go through. And India too, I'm quoting him, after the decline of the classical empire of the Guptas in the 6th century, there occurred similar shift of emphasis to the disadvantage of the central kingdom. He talks about Samantization, etc. Then from that came feudalization of polity. So this is the kind of discussion which is happening here, and it has just started as far as South is concerned, and not from anybody from Tamil Nadu, but from MGS Narayanan and others from Calicut University, who had an exposure to the kind of thinking that was going on in North India. Now I come to B.D. Chattopadhyay's questioning. One cannot satisfactorily reduce vast ramifying reality of past early historical society to a pattern. The rationale for early medieval India should begin by identifying the major historical processes. 3. Expansion of state society through process of local state formation. Peasantization of tribes and caste formation, cult appropriation and integration. These ideas of B.D. Chattopadhyay is very well known. I don't have to repeat. You can refer the book. But when you come back to Nilkant Shastri's South India, History of South India, the chapter 4, and it is almost a Bible. So, but when we were revising syllabus here, the first book everybody will be suggesting would be Nilkant Shastri. We were revising the syllabus in 83, but we will be referring to Nilkant Shastri because as a basic book. But people could not distinguish what has progressed after that. That is the problem. I would like to quote Nilkant Shastri here. Chapter 4 is on the dawn of history. And if he had stopped with that, there would not have been any problem. Aryanization. Dawn of history, Aryanization. It is whether it is right or wrong, I am not going into it. The dominant idea that was there, and a historian was influenced by that, and he is making giving an explanation. History begins in South India. See, look at his perception. History begins in South India as in North. So they did not make a distinction between North and South because this has got to be negated by further research. That is why I am quoting this part. History begins in South India as in North, underline or italics, with the advent of Aryans. The progress of the Aryanization of South is reflected in literature and legend. Archaeology, even now, it's not very helpful. It is still, there is a problem as far as archaeology is concerned. You know about what is going on the date of iron. So if we accept the latest finds, so then the statement will be, there was iron age in South India when North was experiencing copper age. that kind of statements, I don't know whether people will take it or we have to wait for more evidence. So, but Nilkant Shastri had his reasons. He said very clearly, reflected in literature and legend. On the basis of literature and legend, I am making this statement. Aryavarta, growing knowledge of South in North Indian literature. That was his argument. Panini, Katyayana, Kautilya, Greek accounts, Bodhayana, Asokan edicts, and now Agastya legends are also now doing the rounds. Actually, people forgetting that he is a cultural marker. I have found as many as 18 Agastyas. Parasurama and the West Coast, nature of Aryanization, evidence of language, later reactions and theories, routes from north to south, contact with the lands in the west and in the east. So 600 BC, 400 BC becomes very important. Now comes the question of my teaching in this department with this kind of other ideas being discussed. How do I situate the South Indian history or the Tamil Nadu history in this kind of discussion that's going on around me? That was a challenge to me. This is what I call rethinking. My rethinking, it started around that 76-83 exposure. When I joined Delhi University 83 to say 93, I came out with a work from Societas to Civitas. I came out with a work titled Societas to Civitas. So when I say Societas to Civitas, on the basis of the social process, a study, stages of development of society, social formation, and I termed it as evolution of political society. Consciously, I shifted the emphasis from a politico-economic or socio-economic framework to a political society framework and tried to use Morgan, Louis Henry Morgan, whose volumes had to be reprinted with my prefatory introduction. That made me think. So now what I did there, I tried to identify the management, emergence of management apparatus, and naturally he uses Gentile expression, Gentile society, polity on the anvil, sophistication of the apparatus, and the Calabara interregnum, which arrested its growth. But this exercise gave me an opportunity to scan the literature, and I would even now, after 1993, now I am telling the appendices are more important than the argument in the book. That is my reflection even now. So why? Because Appendix 1 is epigraphical references to chronologically later, epigraphical references to places in Tamil. That was one exercise I did, which gave me an idea about Nadu formation in terms of Kattu Nadu, Kungu Nadu, etc. Then the foreign notices also helped me to a certain extent. Then I prepared an appendix on Sangam literature, the basic data, as appendix 3. Then appendix 4 was on landscape, which we call it as Thinai. A lot of people have written about the landscape in Sangam literature. And landscape or a totality of human experience, if you want, we can say. But the most important work I could do was clan titles and totemic symbols of the 3 lineages. So I collected clan titles and totemic symbols of the 3 lineages. Then in 1978, my father did a PhD on Sangam chieftains and their times. I improved upon it as chieftaincy is a developmental approach and published it in the Indian History Congress 1978. So this thinking part has started even then. The battlefields, because every Sangam literature you have some mentioned some battle or something. Then folk art forms in Sangam literature. So the kind of data collection that economic activities and all that, this book enabled me to have some kind of a hold on what is what. So my approach to Tamil Nadu history is ever since their emergence. So here, even the book I just mentioned, it has that our recent book 2025 said it has 5 chapters. First chapter is Age of Poetry. Second chapter is Age of Empire. The third chapter is Age of Transition. And then the fourth chapter is Age of Europeans. And the fifth chapter is Age of Freedom. Uh, but I am looking at it as social formation because I was teaching in that kind of a atmosphere that I have to think about it as a social formation. Uh, when I say this, we are concerned with two important disciplines. One is literary studies, another is history. The literary studies and history, they should have cooperated with each other. Instead, each one started defending its territoriality. This is the case of every. That's why that interdisciplinary thing has not come into existence. Although some people have tried, I will come back to that a little later. But these literary studies and history have had a close but probable problematic relationship with these. With the discipline contains the elements of the other, although both of them contain the element of the other. So I don't want to go into a detail, but I would like to tell you the study of the social process covering the changes in material life of the early Tamils I undertook with a working definition of social formation. I owe this definition to Burtonstein. I have had a very wonderful opportunity to work with him in the archives for 1 year. Although we were working on archives, we were talking about early Indian history only. So he gave me a working definition of social formation. At the Sangam age, social formation at this stage of Tamil history refers to a people who share material interests which they manage politically and preserve over time the agrarian property collectively through complex redistribution and communal appropriation of surplus labor. This definition is that of Professor Burtonstein. You will find this in feudalism debate also. He is the only person who has participated in the feudalism debate. I can quote those lines from there also. From that, he gave me this. Now you look at this and then try to look at the process. So that made me think between 93 and 96, I came across two conference papers which further refined my thinking. In 1991, I happened to read Timothy Earl edited Chiefdoms, Power, Economy, and Ideology. The very expression chiefdom denotes an intermediate society. It is not a state society yet, but at the same time, it's not a non state society completely. So, anthropologists have coined this term chiefdoms. And there was a conference in 1985. The conference papers were published in 1991. And the people who participated are Christian Christiansen, Kendall Rio Zans, Antonio Gilman, Tail Ferguson. This is a very interesting paper by Tail Ferguson. From chiefdom to city state. He has studied one Greek city state. And many others have worked on chiefdoms. So, chiefdom are intermediate societies, neither states nor egalitarian society. And I found that it was useful for study of evolution of complex society. So that's why I came out. And 96, I got opportunity to be sectional president in both History Congress and South Indian History Congress. So in the Indian History Congress, I used the suggestions of this conference, and I wrote From Chiefdom to State, Kaveri Reflections on Kaveri Delta Social Formations. So that's the paper I wrote in 1996. What it is, I will come back a little later. The second one was again Cultural Studies Conference of 1988, and that was edited by Nicholas Dirks, and it has come. So now, since I have raised this chiefdom to state, the kind of work done by others also, and by me also in the appendix I mentioned, the concept of chiefdom. See, now for the first time, using a concept to describe a society, a social formation. That's what I'm trying to convey. We have already talked about it. See, what is this Trinai? The Trinai, K. Sivathambi has also written, so many others have written, the landscape part. Naturally, it is ecology. You see, that consciousness of ecology, which was not there earlier, now we can bring in here and improve. My appendix 3 and 4 is directly related to this ecology. And before coming to Delhi University, this Tamil University Tanjavur gave me a short-term project, Environment and Urbanization from Sangam Literature. I completed that project, and also I came to Delhi. Before that, I submitted, and it is also published. So now to apply the concept of chiefdom, you need about 10 criteria. Criteria number 1, ecology. The entire Sangam literature, because the application of Trinai concept, either it happened in the mountainous region, or it happened in the littoral region, or it happened in the forest region, or it happened in a dry region, or it happened in a agrarian region. So that is the Trinai concept. All of you know that. So then about the people, you are having lot of ethno-historical information. The clan titles and all that which I mentioned, the clan titles gave you the ethno-historical information. And whether it is simply clans, no, you have 3 ruling lineages also have come into it. Romila Thapar would have called it a lineage society. She gave Father Hira's lecture on lineage society. But I wrote a developmental approach to chieftaincies. That is appendix 6. Then there were specific patterns. All of us who know from Tamil Nadu, 7 patterns. Vallals, they are called. Then you also get information on a primordial state. I would like to call it a primordial state, Vendu. It is Vendu, that is why Vendar. I presented a paper in South Indian History Congress. And political geography, which Subrayulu later on applied inscriptions, and then he wrote the political geography of the Cholas. But you have information here also. Kinship, Nadu formation, because later day inscriptions attest. You take it as a memory, it doesn't matter. But still, there is some kind of a continuity. Memory is there. So socio-political process could be worked out. What is missing in this 10th criteria is an extraneous ideology. It is here I strongly differ from Nilkant Shastri and others. Brahminism, or the idea of Brahmin, is not something native to. I see as origin the history there, and he didn't see any difference. And he also wrote Aryan elements in Sangam literature. Then later on, M.G.S. Narayanan also wrote Vedic, Shastric, and Brahminic elements. All these in literature, you are getting all that. But whether it was a dominant ideology, that is the question. So, like in North, whether the Kshatriya power was legitimized by the Brahminic ideology, that is the question. So, sociologist by name Fuller, he has a very interesting statement to make. Kshatriyas of South India are not born, but they are made. So they claim that status because of the influence of the Brahminic ideology. So this led me to the second paper which I presented for South Indian History Congress in Cultural History section as a sectional president. And here conventional historians may not agree with my title, I called it politics, culture, and caste in early Tamil Nadu. So that politics of that is not the politics of today. You have a clan-based society containing Cheras, Cholas, and Pandyas. The incoming Pallavas are trying to come and enter into that society. The struggle between them is actually the politics. And then caste. Power, in order to be legitimate, must be sanctioned by authority, and authority in turn must be validated by priesthood. So that is the question. Who are the priests of the Sangam period? Were they Brahmins? You get different names. Andanar, Andanar Enbor, Arovar, Arudolil Andanar. So you have a lot of definitions on Brahmins, and people have written a lot about them. But my study shows it is difficult to identify the community of priests. And the second difficulty is the quantum of Brahminic influence in legitimizing political power through yajna and yaga. Also, we are not getting many references. Yes, Brahminic presence was definitely there. I don't deny that. Gotra names are clear indicators. Gautamanar, Markandeyanar, Vanmikiyar, Nedumbaradayanar, Bharadwaja, Skylark, Best Bull. Oh, these are things which we can definitely identify. It is not only in Sangam literature, in Airavata Mahadana, in early Tamil inscriptions also, there it is there. So now to work on Brahmins and Brahmanism systematically is the next work I took. So power, authority, and legitimation were all rolled into one person. Vendan. Vendan. Moovendar. Chera was a Vendan. Chola was a Vendan. And Pallava and Chera Chola Pandya was the Vendan. So now I had a discussion with Berdenstein. He was always talking about Brahman and present. I said, no, I don't find. Even the Vendan is not a product of a king Brahman formula. You cannot apply a king Brahman formula to Sangam literature at all. Well, when can you apply this situation? Now track the coming of the Pallavas and their inscriptions, which is all collected by my guru, Professor T.V. Mahalingam, published by ICHR under the inscription project. So each one of them will indicate the Gotras, this thing, and the Brahminic impulses. Let us put it as impulses. So you can trace what is there in literature now. Under the Pallavas, you see them in inscriptions. So naturally, it corroborates. It has been trickling. It has been trickling down. So we can work out the Brahminic spread. So the Pallavas, in the politics, culture, caste, what I suggested is, the Pallavas had the compulsion to legitimize themselves in a multi-clan society using genealogy and several symbols of substance. Now, this paper, Politics, Culture, Caste, which I'm telling you, it's also available in social science probings. After I presented the paper in South Indian History Congress, it was also published in social science probings earlier. I can give all the references later. So now when the Pallavas, when they were coming into competing with the other three clans, they develop some kind of strategies, we can call it. One, warrior Brahman image. Warrior Brahman image. Why warrior Brahman image? You get the depiction of a sword wielding Brahman. So they trace their genealogy from Brahma and then come to Drona, Aswatthama, the euponymous Pallava, and then the Pallava who is giving the grant. So inclusion of Drona and Aswatthama in the genealogy is very, very important. So you have a picture, an image of a sword-wielding Brahman. Yes, Brahman archer, Drona and Aswatthama, they have been included. Claims of genealogy and the nature of kingship will be warrior kingship. And rituals like Abhisheka, it is in this sense that we can say by 6th century, the Chakravartin model of kingship almost it has become whole of India. I've been following that. So like that, they use several symbols of substance. So that is what I wanted to, I have discussed in that paper. Now, this kingship part, I have further elaborated. The kingship has now changed from uh, warrior kingship to divine kingship. Under Nandivarman, around Nandivarman, you find that he is claiming himself that he is the Paramabhattarga, Paramabhakta, Shankara Bhakta, like that. So the Abhishek Namas in the status is now, the image is now changing from a warrior king to this. I have discussed it in detail in Professor D.N. Jha's commemoration volume. I've given the paper, Marauding Soldiery to Munificent Divinity. So I have expanded that and I've explained that. So my findings, I would like to, in the rethink, that I would like to place before you. A clan-based society now becomes caste-based society. I won't still say Varna-based society. And luckily, my good friend Rajan Kurukal, although thinking in a political economy, socio-economic framework, he has written a paper in IHR from clan to caste. And he has also written in studies in history also, there is a paper. So Rajan Gurukal has written, Gotra is the record of the kin and social relations. Mythical charters do not mention royal sacrifices. The kingship developed in 3 stages. 250 to 350, Vendar, 350 to 600 to king, 7th to 10th century, the Chola domination. And another characteristic feature which needs to be studied, which I'm doing it at the moment, see, unless we go into each ingredient and explain it with reference to sources again, this rethink will not be complete. What I find in Tamil Nadu is operation of a double phenomena of sacrifice and gift. See, gifts began as aspects of sacrifice to generate sovereignty, but later became expressions of sovereignty. Whose idea is this? Eatsman. The title of the book is Gifts of Power. I agree with him completely. It began as aspects of sacrifice to generate sovereignty, but later became expressions of sovereignty. The king, queen, royal functionaries, chieftains, local officials, all of them acted out their hierarchy through gift exchange, through the temple medium of temple. So that gift exchange is a very important aspect of South Indian society. Now, another finding that I would like to study further is, though divinity came to be attached with the office of the king had not become divine. This distinction has to be kept in mind. The king was human, divinity was attached only to kingship. It was only the royal function, it was divine and not the person. Then another aspect which comes in our study is kingship became increasingly incorporative. Here, the suggestion of B.D. Chattopadhyaya, integration, he talks about integration of cult. But I would like to talk about the nature of kingship and its development. It becomes incorporative. So that incorporation comes, ritual pageants are examples of that. The temple gods, king and priests, all 3 are important. Sociologists have studied about it. And priests make the offerings. God preserves the king, kingdom and subjects. King protects the temple and reward the priests. So this aspect, I have come out and some explanation I have offered in Seema Bhava edited the case of Tamil music from service to entertainment. I've discussed that also. So through several exercises, I am trying to use the sources to explain a few other things. So the 2 areas which influenced me between 93 and 96 are the chiefdom level concept, and then the politics, or we can call it cultural studies if you want. I can use that also. The cultural studies part, which was being underplayed in our historiography till then. A tradition in our historical graphical tradition, culture and ideology seem to have been underplayed up to a particular point. Uh, so the Nicholas Dirks actually brought in that kind of study. Now, to give you a little more on the Brahman part, I have organized the reference to Brahmins in literature, and I have organized it from Pallava inscriptions because I didn't go into Cholas. So I have just stopped with my 4th or 5th century AD, which this is an exercise. Early here means I stop with 5, not exactly others. We can bring it up to Cholas also, but I'm not addressing it for reason of time. So I will give you an example of how the migration of Brahmanas are actually mentioned in literature. I would like to give few examples. Aitreya Brahmana records tradition of Vishwamitra's condemnation of his 50 sons. Anyone who is familiar with Sanskrit literature, you can easily, and then the mention of in the borders of Aryavarta, ancestors of Andhras, Pundaras. So naturally, others draw from it, and then I don't want to suggest. So people who are using this information to relate it to people, they used it differently. It's further. It has got to be validated. So that Aryavarta, Aitra Brahmana, ancestors, they are people have written. Those who wrote on early history of Andhra, they said Andhras, Pundaras, Sabaras, Pulindas. There is no reference to either Tamilagam or Brahmins in this list. It stops with Andhra. Another tradition associates their arrival here with Parasurama, extirpation of the Kshatriyas. Gift to Kasyapa coming to south created Kerala by causing the sea to withdraw and settle the Brahmanas there. In actually, Kerala is also called Parasurama Kshetra. People may be knowing. So then the introduction of Agastya, which is being talked about now as a Prohita, chaplain of Cholas and Pandyas. And actually, Pandyas appropriated Agastya in their genealogy from about 7th or 8th century onwards. And anyone who knows Brahmin Gotras of earlier period, Agastya was not one of the Gotrakara rishis. He was not the Saptarishi. He was the 8th. So always we have to take him as a cultural marker. But he enters the Pandyan chronology in charters a little later. Hero of Bhargava clan, they appear in Rig Veda. So like that, people have used on Nilakant Shastri's suggestion that the South presence in North literature, migration, and K.K. Pillai has talked about not at one stretch, but a different kind of this thing. He has talked about that expression Vadamaha, and all that he has worked. Sridhara Menon, N. Subramanian, several others have worked on literature part and the expression Brahmanas, they have worked. But actually, the Pallava inscriptions are much more concrete. We can very easily work out their entry into Tamil Nadu. So, keeping all this in mind, I am suggesting that stage 1 of Sangam literature, let us wait for the archaeological evidence. I don't want to comment on that. If that is the first stage of the development of society, Sangam society, or pre-Pallavan society, that will be stage 1. Then the Pallava stage, that is, say, from 4th century, 5th century, 6th, 7th, 8th, until the Cholas, that could be treated. There is enough material to be treated for a social formation. And Cholas has been extensively researched. They are all useful, and naturally one can easily work out a kind of a social formation about the Chola period. Then Vijayanagar. This is how it is better to rethink about Tamil Nadu history purely on historical lines and academic inquiry, and not to be vitiated by other extraneous ideas. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful lecture and wonderful lecture. Now I will start the Q&A session. I'll ask our audience who already joined to our Google Meet and who watch from our Facebook channel. If they
Yeah.
have any questions, they
Kindly,
can
you direct the questions, receive it from them, and pass it on. I will answer.
yes, they can unmute themselves and ask directly to sir, or they can also write in the chat box. So I will,
But I can't read it. Only you have to help me in
yeah,
reading.
yes, I will.
Thank you.
So if anyone has any other question, so I will check our Facebook page till then. If
Yeah, yeah,
anyone,
yeah. Please.
okay, we have one question. So Anton Shorkar is asking one question.
Yeah.
He's asking that to what extent does the historiography of early Tamil India suffer from an implicit Brahmanical or Dravidian teleology? Can we truly, in quote, rethink this history without dismantling the ideological frameworks that have historically shaped its narratives?
Correct. I mentioned, even Nilkant Shastri was influenced by the Aryan Dravidian kind of a divide. We have to come out of that. How to come out of that? We have to come out of that by using Brahmanism and the impulses of Brahmanism as it was coming. We have to track through the sources. And Professor Champakalakshmi, if you read her presidential address, I draw your, and also it is included in her book later, she works out several stages. It did not come in one. Upanishadic ideas, one after the other only it came. So we as we grow in our, I mean, the historical knowledge and analyzing historical sources, as these developments come with the influence of technology, etc., we have to come out of some of these older this thing of Aryan and Dravidian. We have to look for the actual ingredients of the society and look for the sources whether we have answers. One is Brahmanism. Once you track the influence of Brahmanism in stages, naturally you can link it up with Pallava dynasty and the domination of Brahmination, and in a way, and I have been telling, although I have not written primarily on that, I always put a question to my students. Why Bhakti movement in South India earlier than North India? What is the reason? One reason could be the Brahmin domination, the political domination of the Brahmins, or Brahminic ideology was claimed superior, because Pallavas and with the decline of the Pallavas, it also came to be questioned. That is why the king has to himself say, I am the Param Bhakt, I am the first servant of God. He had to declare it in his titles. That's the paper I have written in Professor Jha's volume. Why Bhakti movement in South India earlier than North India? One has to give a historical explanation. Like why permanent settlement failed. We came up with the Raitwari settlement, something like that. We have to give a proper explanation. That's a historical exercise. So we have to come out of this Aryan Dravidian business.
Thank you, sir. Now we will take another question. So it's asked by Anirban Dash. He's asking that in what ways does the study of early Tamil history remain trapped in textual hegemony, particularly through the over-reliance on Sangam literature? How can alternative methodologies such as archaeology and oral traditions disrupt this dominance?
See, I would answer this question, I appreciate the concern, and that is also the state of affairs. Say, when it came to Nilakant Shastri, he was so confident about the archives of the Chola period. He was a master of the archives that was available. But when it came to ancient period, archaeology was not helpful even then, and even now we are getting only sporadic. Now, I don't want to make any statement here on the recent finds and the kind of things. Coins are totally, we are not getting any support from numismatics also. So the kind of questions that we have to situate Tamil Nadu history, for a very long time, we relied on literary sources only. So if you want to create an image of a society, you can do it only with literature. There is no other way you can create an image of a society without literature. And you can criticize that image using other sources. So now I think who wrote? I think Professor Champakalashmi was the first to write a paper, formal paper, on archaeology and literary tradition in South India. I don't remember the journal, but she was the first to write. See, if what is scientific history? We text need not necessarily be, but to create an image, we have to use a text. To question that image, we need other sources, corroborative sources. So with archaeology, we are not able to do anything. Archaeology, it's except for a few places, there is no horizontal archaeology. Pumpuhar is one place which has been very well done. So literature has a lot of information, historical information. It cannot be glossed over. Because today's world, information from any source, we have to check the veracity. How to check the veracity? We need other sources. That is the difference between a journalist and a historian. A historian is a doubting Thomas. We don't believe the literature. We create an image and we also try to deconstruct or question it. Not deconstruction, we will question it. Veracity of that statement. So that is why archaeological finds should help us to question, and then the literature is not fully stratified either. And earliest book, Tamil's 1800 years, by Kanakasabai Pillai, the entire thing was written from the commentaries of Salapadikaram of 12th century. You will find a lot of 12th century ideas in that book, as if it is an ancient one. So this is the difference between professional history and populist history. A professional historian would like to check with whatever means he has. He would like to check the veracity of the information. And because he's a responsible, creating an image, still it is helpful. So that is why that the image we have to use, like we have this method of collecting clan titles, analysis. Now we can do computer analysis also, like Karashima did. So all those things you should be subjected to, so that we arrive at a kind of a consensus on, yes, this was the society of that period. So that is very, very welcome. But unfortunately, both archaeology and numismatics are not helpful in checking the veracity of the information in Sangam literature to a satisfactory level. Still, we are writing about it. we have to write. So that's why some general statements, the rethinking, etc., comes with the development of technology as well as findings. Both are taken into account. It is not rewriting, it is rethinking.
Thank you, sir. We have two questions in our chat box, and I'll read out for you, sir. So, first question is that to what extent can we challenge the notion of a singular, in quote, Tamil identity in early history? Does rethinking early Tamil history require dismantling the idea of a linear and homogeneous cultural evolution?
So now that this question also requires, I have to show the book which has come in 2025. So the Tamils, a portrait of a community, and nearly 90 million people around the world are identified as Tamils or Tamil speaking. When 90 million people are speaking the language, naturally the linguistic identity is applied, isn't it? So when somebody speaks a language, that language also will have a history and that will also have a culture. So that's why I said Tamil as a body of knowledge, continuous literary tradition, it is recorded. So it is the literary tradition which is still continuous. All other things are a little, I don't know whether that continuity we cannot maintain. That is why we have to be guided by literature, checked by, and literary data has to be checked with other corroborative evidences. Identity is real, but it is language identity, culture identity. It is real. It's oldest language. Nobody can question that. It's a classical language. Nobody can question that. Continuous literary tradition. It's available. Nobody can question it. So you have to read the latest book, by David Schulman, Tamil biography. So I don't think any other state in India has this kind of a continuous culture, literary tradition. Naturally, literary. That's why at one stage, a literary intellectual dominated the intellectual scene. Even for Nilkant Shastri to say that Sangam literature belonged to first 3 centuries of the Christian era, he required the approval of R.P. Sethu Pillai, the Tamil Prof, join in the same university. This, as students, I did not realize. As a researcher, I realized.
Thank you, sir. Now I'll take the another question. It's also from chat box. It's asked by Ruthik A. Asking that, sir, can you give your comprehension on recent Iron Age discovery and how far it will push the early Tamil history? Because there should be some sort of rudimentary civilization existing prior to 3000 BCE to use fully developed iron weapons.
You see, I have read the book, both in the Tamil, the one published from Tamil Nadu. I have read both. In Tamil, it is called Irimbin Tonmai. In English, it is the Antiquity of Iron. Okay. Whether it is slightly premature for us or for me to accept it as Iron Age. I don't know. Few archaeologists have also questioned it. Okay, you got it at a place called Sivagalai. You got it in the Tuticorin district. So now we have to also have something corresponding to in Kerala, this side. And then we should also have something on the Andhra coast. So a little more, we have to wait for some more finds. And then the method used also is new. It is not carbon 14, it is OSL, it is called. So that has pushed it by 1,000 years. So it is nearly 3250 BC or so, they have arrived at some kind of a mean. So I would rather like to wait for some more evidence from other areas of neighboring areas of South India to have an opinion on that. I'm not an archaeologist. As a historian, for me to use it for early historical society, I would like to wait for some more finds.
Thank you, sir. Now we will take our last question from our Facebook channel. And also I'm asking to our audience here, if they have any other questions, they can unmute themselves or they can write in the chat box also. So it's asked by Arnav Rokhi. He is asking one question, that how does the act of rethinking early Tamil history challenge or reinforce the post-colonial tension between indigeneity and modernity? Is the attempt to retrieve a, in quote, pure Tamil past itself a reactionary construct shaped by colonial binaries of tradition versus modernity?
See, I can answer this question, but I would like to just say this is another person who is a linguist who has written on Tamil and biography. I will read out the chapters that will answer. And very interestingly, this book also uses the kacheri the concert format for each one of the chapters. For beginnings, he has given a subtitle Alapana. We call it Alapana. First budding, Tamil from inside, Pallavi. Second budding, musical self, Anupallavi. Imperial, and then the sixth chapter itself explains a Tamil modernity. How can there is no one? It has to, modernity has to be there. It is definitely there. It is by an expert, David Schulman. He is an expert in Telugu. He is an expert in Tamil. He is like A.K. Ramanujan. And tradition and modernity definitely will be there. All these things which were written in 1920s and then it was written in 1950s, 60s in a certain way, and then we revisited in 1983, 93, etc. And now that rethinking will go on. It will depend on two things: finding new evidence, if archaeology is coming to our rescue to question each and every idea of Sangam literature, nothing like that. Because the veracity, checking the veracity of the information given in any text is the primary duty of the historian. Either it should be a finding or there should be an advancement in technology. Now this Iron Age is also because of technological advancement. It has pushed the age of the objects by at least 1,000 years. Earlier it was all carbon dating. Now it is OSL method. And this OSL method should be applied to other finds, and then we have to see whether a group of people lived, whether they moved from one place to another. How can Iron Age alone be there only in Tamil Nadu? It should be there in parts of Andhra. It should be there in Kerala also. The finding is only from Tuticorin. Sivagalai is located in the east coast. So we have to get more evidence to say something about that. Yes, it belonged to this. Then the civilization can be accepted as okay. The dating of Sangam literature has to go back. Until then, I would like to wait.
Thank you, sir. And if anyone have any other question, they can also unmute themselves. And if not, so it's end of our today's session. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and thank you for also sharing your wonderful and very interesting thoughts on rethinking of early Tamil history. So thank you, sir, for joining.
Welcome.